Hello, everyone. It's Kate Stillman with the Yoga Healer podcast, and I'm here with Dean Pohlman, who's the founder of Man Flow Yoga and author of Yoga Fitness for Men. So welcome to the show, Dean.
Thank you for having me, Kate. Glad we finally got here after I think you're scheduling 2 or 3 times. So excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, me too. So I mean, one of the things on your website that really caught my attention right away is the yoga for fitness, not spiritual. And so one of my first questions is, I have a wellness pro community at Yoga Healer called Yoga Health Coaching, and it's one of the things that people keep bringing up is like, why is yoga so female dominant, especially when we look at the more advanced levels of yoga, it's actually fairly male dominant. And when we look at the history of yoga in India, it's very male dominant.
Right.
And now we've got, women, I think it's, I'm just going to throw a non-verified number out there just based on my experience, which is like, it seems like it's over 90% female in general, right?
Yeah.
Around and so is it the spirituality that turns men off? Is that what you found?
So I think there's a lot of different types of guys. I think when I first started doing yoga as kind of like the typical athletic guy, I was a lacrosse player in college, and I started doing yoga really on accident. I wandered into a tailor one day. And I was like, this is not the yoga studio I wandered into a yoga studio one day looking for the tailor. I got that backwards. And I'm like, oh, well, I was going to do a workout anyway. Let me try this. And I had wanted to do yoga for a while, but yeah, honestly, for me, it was the spiritual aspects of it. It was the idea of maybe it was, to me, I guess at the time it was considered feminine. It was considered maybe just being in that more vulnerable state emotionally. And so that was the big turnoff to me. And I mean, but there are plenty of guys who really like that type of, who like that aspect of yoga. So I just knew that if I felt that way, that I wasn't special, and there were going to be millions of other guys like me who felt the same. I think another part of this to consider is, for me, my specific case, but also with a lot of guys in general, they've been playing sports. They've worked out, a lot. That's not to say women haven't either, but for people who are active and who have worked out, taking that experience with movement, with exercise, and then going into a yoga studio and having that movement and exercise activity blended with kind of like with the spiritual aspects, it just doesn't make sense. It would be like, to me, if I was doing a weightlifting session at the gym, and then we also combine that with like, hey, we're going to talk about chakras. I'm like, I'm doing bench press right now. Or like, I'm doing squats right now. I want to make sure I'm doing proper technique. So a lot of it just didn't jive with the way that I had exercised. And I think that's why a lot of people kind of have difficulty getting into yoga with the spiritual aspects, because and that's something that's not spoken about a lot. It's just,
that's a really great point. I mean, and it's also spirituality from another culture, like from another culture that's not like the next door neighbor culture, but it's from another side of the world. It's people that often look very different. I mean, there's a lot of this talk about cultural appropriation now, and whatnot.
I've gotten accused of that plenty of times. But also there are also another population of people who are scared of doing yoga because they're just scared of it because they don't understand what it is. They think that by doing yoga, they're going against Christianity somehow, or that's a huge
worshiping
fear.
Another deity for sure.
Right. I think mainstream yoga fits a few audiences very well, but there are a lot of audiences that just feel like it's not the right fit for them. So I think that's a big reason why a lot of people, not just men, but a lot of, people just don't have an interest in doing yoga.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of curious more too with functional movement, like, 'cause so much of my background in yoga and time on the mat, it sort of landed me like rolling around on the mat and the floor and doing all these, sort of like sitting to standing and back down and around. And when I look at, I don't think I would have been nearly as into functional movement had I not had a yoga practice.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have had the alignment had I not had a yoga practice.
Yeah. I think what's really cool about yoga, at least for me, what was different from all the other types of exercise I was doing was that it actually slowed things down and you could pay attention to technique enough that you could really examine how can I get better, quadricep engagement here, or are my glutes actually engaging here? Or, and those are really important things. And if you're just going to a gym and you don't have a coach who's walking you through all these things in an in-depth fashion, then you don't really pause to think about, are my glutes properly engaging here? Do I feel my abs engaged? Am I using my transverse abdominals? So yoga provided a really cool opportunity to actually be able to check in with your body and make sure that all of these different aspects of movement and just proper exercise were actually happening. And that's what I noticed. It gave me an opportunity to slow down and check in with all these things. Whereas you don't get that opportunity. Like if I'm, as an athlete, if I'm running down the field, I'm not in a full out sprint and then thinking, oh, let's see, are my ankles moving correctly? Are my abs engaged? You don't think about that. But actually taking the time to slow down and practice that allows those aspects of movement to translate into what you're doing without having to think about it. In those other more intense activities and fast moving things.
Yeah. I mean, without yoga, most people don't have an experience of the unified field of their physiology and the parts working with the breath and the breath leading and organizing movement and then the deeper alignment that happens and the deeper levels of integration that happen with deeper levels of alignment. And then to what you're saying, and then if you do have that, then it translates to any kind of physical movement.
Yeah.
And my sister was just saying, and she's turning 50 now, and she's been doing more gym stuff. I guess where she's at, the yoga studios are still either closed or masking, and so it's harder to exercise, but the gyms aren't. And so she and her girlfriends are going to the gym. So we've got these women in their early 50s, and she's like, if I didn't know the alignment and breath work from yoga, and then you add weight, by the time someone's 50, usually they have something going on in some joint.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, she's like, if you add weight, right, and you don't know what is going on and you don't know how to adjust to be able to improve the alignment, then like, wow, you can really get injured fast. And I was like, and that's a big reason why people you don't have a lot of success with workouts at the gym or, in general, because they don't understand those proper movement principles. And like you said, if you can't do it with your just your body weight, then how are you going to be able to do it when you're holding more weight? So yeah, I find that it's a great, and that's what I kind of preach to people in our community is, hey, combine yoga with weight training. A lot of people look at me and they're like, if I just do yoga classes and go to yoga classes, I'm gonna look like you. I'm like, no, that's never going to happen, because a lot of reasons, but. Yeah, I mean, you do need to add in the weights to really build a significant amount of muscle. But if you want to be able to control the weights and move well, then you need to do something. It doesn't have to be yoga, honestly. It could be anything that has similar movement principles to yoga. But yoga is just a really good way to do all the things that serve as that. I like to think of it kind of like as the base of your fitness, like the base pillar of your fitness, motor control, basic mobility, basic strength. And then on top of that, you can build all this other stuff. But, and a lot of people just go straight to I want to sprint and I want to weight train and I want to train like an athlete. Like, well, you move like a couch potato right now. So let's do all these let's see if you can do a lunge. Or let's see if you can like stand on one foot for 30 seconds. Let's do all these basic things and get you strong. And then you can start doing those more challenging, the sexier things. So yeah. So in your community, is it all men?
It's not. We have a lot of women. I'm actually sensing that you would be a really good fit, just because you're into movement, you're into, you speak the speak, so to speak. Wow, I said speak three times, but you talk the talk, of somebody who would be interested in learning the type of yoga that I teach, which is, it's fitness focused. It's focused on anatomy. It's focused on how do we combine active mobility and strength rather than passive stretching. So about 85% of our audience is men, and then 15% is women. So we do have a decent amount of women involved.
Great. And do you find for men, just being around more men in class, whether it's virtual class or in person, is really helpful?
So all of my classes are pre-recorded. So we have an app, we have a streaming website, which is how I do most of all my classes now. But I think having the community, we do have a Facebook group, and we do have a comment section where there are those conversations taking place. And so we definitely do hear there's conversations about, oh, this kind of makes more sense to me, or like, oh, I could never understand how to properly do this, or oh, this modification allows me to actually feel the posture in the right way. So there are conversations like that happen that do make men feel more comfortable, and feel like they're getting more out of it, and feel more confident in general about the workouts.
Yeah. And do you sense that with I just want to go back to the spirituality thing, like, is that something that's not in the practices that you're teaching, or is it something that eventually weaves its way in?
So I just don't include it. It's you can think about the dialogue that's involved in yoga, and if we were to include something that was, I guess I haven't been to into a normal or traditional yoga class in a long time. But if you go to one of those, and let's say, okay, now let's move into Virabhadrasana 1. And I don't use Sanskrit in my classes either. I just assume that people don't speak it, so I don't use it. But let's say we move into Warrior 1, and then we talk about, reach your arms high, or whatever the cue would be. And then from there, you would talk about something spiritual. And for me, I just use that as an opportunity to talk about, hey, let's look at your knee placement, or like, let's check in with your ankles. Let's check in with your back foot. Let's make sure the arch is pronounced, so you're feeling that stretch through your calves. So I just kind of use that as an opportunity to go more in depth in the technique, talk about why it's important, reinforcing the importance of the movements. But there are a lot of people who, to touch on the spiritual component, and there's like, what is spiritual refer to? Because it can be there's so many different aspects of spirituality. It could just be oneness. It could be mindfulness. It could be stillness. And we actually get a lot of people who say, I actually do feel a spiritual component to your classes, because I'm so focused on what my body is doing and breathing, and so focused on being in the present. Whereas, some other classes might talk about being in the present, but I feel like I'm not in the present. So, helping to direct people's minds to be in the present, focus on your body and focus on your breathing, that spiritual component sometimes just makes its way into it without me having to really say anything. So in that way, it does have the spiritual, or maybe you could call it mindfulness or mental benefits. But yeah, I don't talk.
Well, my sense of it is like, if you're actually doing a breath-centered practice and moving your body with intentionality, that what happens is you start to awaken the subtle body, and that's what people consider as spiritual, because then all of a sudden you're in a subtler body experience, and the mind is no longer in the conscious thinking mind or in the subconscious mind, it's in the liminal mind. And now you're experiencing energy and flow, and you might be experiencing unity consciousness, where you feel more connected to all sentient beings. You might be experiencing just a sense of like deep, relaxed inner peace, or santosha or shantaya, or these these words that really are like tapped into that unified field, which is like, if you're doing the practice, it doesn't matter if you're speaking to that, like, right. It's like, it arises. And when it arises, you have the experience of like, oh, okay, this is a different way of being than my normal waking state consciousness. And so at that point, it's like, are you in the realm of spiritual now without even needing to go into the sort of like,
if like the right components are there to put you into a flow state, then sure. I mean, for me, spiritual has always had I wasn't kick dragging and screaming to church as a child, but I definitely didn't want to go. And as soon as I was like old enough, that I think I was 15 or 14 when one morning we went to church, and I just like didn't go at all. And I think I quit the choir like mid service or something, and just like walked out. And so for me, like spiritual has always had like an organized religion connotation.
Oh, interesting.
And so for a lot of people, like you hear spiritual, like, I don't want to go to church. When, and since then I've completely reframed my views on what spirituality is and what organized spirituality is. Whereas, so anyways, to bring it back to your point, like I just never had an interest in spirituality because of that reason, because I associated with organized religion. And it's probably a reason why a lot of other people, don't want to have spirituality mentioned.
Yeah, they don't want to like shove down their throat is what I'm hearing there. It's like, that's how you were raised, which is like, you have to be one of us, you have to believe what we believe, and you have to go where we go to believe,
right.
to rekindle our belief or to reaffirm it. Yeah. There's not a lot of, what I find in religious families is there's not much choice. It's more of indoctrination.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then I just reading a book on random thought. I was just reading a book on Phil Jackson. He's really spiritual, but he grew up in this very, coach of the Lakers and the championship Bulls. And he grew up in a very religious family in Wyoming, actually. And he was a very spiritual person, but he fell out of Christianity and studied all these different types of religions, a lot of Native American spirituality practices and other things. And, it's interesting because he seemed so much more spiritual when he was actually examining all these different spiritual practices than if he were just following along to, the dogma of the religion he was born into. So
that actually could be a distinction between religion and spirituality, is the inquiry practice as a as a format, right? It's like something that allows inquiry, that invites inquiry rather than defending a stance, right? But something that invites the deeper questioning of like, who am I? Like it's a basic premise of yoga, the question, who am I? It's like, do a deep exploration on that until you exhaust it, right? And it's like, that's just part of ancient yoga. I mean, not even ancient. That's part of, if we look at yoga before it hit the US, we could say.
It does, but it does such a good, like you spend 45 minutes where you're just breathing and just moving, and that's it. And you just get into this place of much more clarity and much more calm. And it's, and I often don't think of that as a spiritual experience. I just get there. I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good. And I feel like I can make better decisions right now. And not everything seems so, so crappy anymore. But I guess a lot of people just don't think of that as a spiritual experience when, anyways.
Yeah. So what do you find with just teaching men in general different than how you were taught yoga? Let's just say that, there's a reason that yoga classes are 90% female or whatever. I'm making this stat up, but that's been my experience. What are you doing that's different, that's drawing in men, and why are they staying around?
So number one, the flexibility aspect is huge. If you ask let's say you ask a 50-year-old man and you ask a 30-year-old woman to do a standing forward fold, you're going to get like two totally different things. And men will go to a yoga class and they'll just feel, completely, they'll just feel completely out of it because they can't replicate the same shapes that the women are making. So a lot of what we do is providing modifications. So showing people, hey, here's where you can start, and this is what you want to feel. And the big focus of what I repeat over and over is, don't just mirror me. I want you to actually do the pose as it pertains to your mobility levels. So it doesn't really matter what you look like. The important thing is that you are feeling the right muscles engage and you're feeling the right muscles stretch as are appropriate for the pose. So a big part of it is the modifications and making sure that we're using things where it doesn't require as much hip flexibility. Men also tend to use their upper bodies more. So they'll make different mistakes in different poses. If they're doing one huge difference, have a woman and have a man do a boat pose, and you'll see, oh gosh, we are dealing with two different anatomies here, because the women are, even if they're not super strong, are able to get into this beautiful boat V shape. I'm like, oh, that looks great. And you have a man do it and they're like, bleh. And they just, they can't keep their spine organized at all. They don't have the hip strength because they're used to using their upper bodies. So there's the flexibility aspect. There's also we have different centers of gravity. We tend to use upper body more. Women tend to focus on the hips and core. And then I think,
which also makes other poses easier, like all the arm balances, right? Like where men have more of a advantage.
Yeah. Like I was able to walk into a yoga class and do crow pose my first time. People were like, oh my God, he's doing crow. I'm like, what? This is just like a modified push-up with my legs in the air. It's like, yeah, sure. And then like I did a handstand in class once. People were like, do you have a background in gymnastics? I'm like, no, I'm not. I just managed to like get up into a handstand, like walk over to the wall on accident. So they're like, oh, you wanted to get the wall. I'm like, no, I just faked my way into this. But yeah, so men do have a lot of advantages when it comes to upper body strength. And then I think another aspect of it is culturally, right? Men want to get stronger. I think 10 years ago when I first started yoga, physical fitness goals were a lot different. I think now there's like not a push, but now there's definitely a growing trend of women doing much more strength training than there was. Women were scared of getting bulky, right? Like, if I lift weights, I'll get bulky. And then most women figured out, oh, if I do weights, I'll get bulky in the places I want to get bulky for the most part. And also it's going to take me months and years to actually get any bulk whatsoever. But, 10 years ago, I think men wanted to build more muscle, women wanted to be limber, right? So there were those different goals. And I focused my classes on, hey, we're here, we're in this posture. Let's focus on how we can build muscle here. Let's see if we can how can we improve muscle activation here? How can we recruit more muscle fibers? How can you add a strength element to these postures? And that's what we focus on a lot. And that's what translates into the more noticeable benefits, right? Flexibility is great. Flexibility is a precursor to having strength. But when we add flexibility and strength together, that's when you get a longer lasting result. It becomes more than just a Band-Aid. It turns into a much more noticeable in terms of movement, in terms of just how you feel during the day. So I think that aspect also brings people coming back to Manful Yoga, because they do this style with this focus on strength and active mobility, and they just feel the results, in much less time and much more significantly than compared to the yoga classes that they were doing before this. So that was kind of a long explanation. I think I might have lost myself on that, in addition to some people
just like
listening.
one point in there too. It's like men actually, in many ways, I found have an advantage in being stiff coming into class because they're not hyper flexible. So they're
Sure.
not, right? Whereas like the woman who's naturally flexible goes into yoga thinking I'm so good at yoga and doing all these things, but they're not protecting their joints.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there definitely are two types of people. And I found that there are men too who are hypermobile. And so for the most, yeah, but
yeah, and I'm a super stiff woman, so I get that too. Like my whole
yeah,
family's like just really tight.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually get called out sometimes because people are like, he's not even making progress. He's been teaching yoga for years and he looks just like he did 5 years ago. I'm like, I'm just not a flexible person. I would be a very good, I'm actually a decent power lifter, without actually being that consistent with my workouts, just because I am wired to build strength. And flexibility wise, I might never be able to do, the perfect down dog, just because I don't know. I haven't stretched that far yet. But yeah, there are definitely different types of flexibility, and that has to be considered when you're assessing what's possible for me or what's not.
Yeah. So are you finding the people that are coming to you, the men that are coming to you in particular, like are their goals more around injury prevention? Is it more around recovering from injuries?
Mm-hmm.
Is it more for just all around mental health or all around just mind body health, or what are you finding?
We have a few kind of distinct audiences, or I like to call them identities or buckets, so to speak. In bucket number one, we have guys who are concerned about injury, who injury concerns, or they're maybe coming back from an injury. So a lot of back injuries, people scared about getting surgery, people who have had surgery and their doctor said, you should do yoga. And they're like, but what type of yoga? They're like, I don't know, just go do yoga. There's only one kind, right? There's only one teacher. So just go do yoga. So we get a lot of people who are concerned about injury, people who are recovering from injury. We also get a lot of guys who are active, and who are realizing that mobility is important, that flexibility, that stretching is important. And they need to do these things if they want to be able to keep doing what they enjoy doing. So those are where the runners, the endurance athletes, the weightlifters, the more athletic people come in. But then we also do have the people who are using this as their main form of fitness, who, maybe they don't like lifting weights, or they don't like the more stressful, the more joint stressful or more high impact workouts. And they just enjoy doing yoga just because they like the movement of it. So we do have a lot of people who are using this as their primary form of fitness. So those are the main. And then we also do have the people who enjoy doing yoga as it's traditionally practiced, but they're not getting the results that they want from that in terms of their physique. And so then they come into this and they're like, oh, how do I make Warrior 2? How can I make that more strength focused, or how can I build more muscle with yoga? So we do have a lot of people who are looking to deepen their practice, at least the third limb aspect of that. So.
And then with the classes, it seems like a lot of them are like really targeted to people that are doing different different things. Like, are you doing squats properly? Like, where you're doing these cross over to people that are also going to the gym and doing squats.
Yeah. I mean, so a lot of that is just based on talking with people in our community and asking, hey, what are you trying to work on? Or a lot of it is, I think initially it was me just making solutions for myself, because again, I assume that if I have this problem, then other people have this problem as well. So a lot of it's just making solutions for myself. But yeah, we definitely do try to create content for the people that we know are likely to be in our our audience. So we do have a lot of stuff for runners, a lot of stuff for weightlifters, a lot of stuff for the endurance athletes, a lot of stuff for people who have had back problems, back pain, desk jockeys. So. a
And
lot
what
of
do you
different types
find
of
in
people.
terms of like how long people want to do an online video for? Like, what's your?
I was just having a conversation. My dad, every time he comes and visits me, or we go visit them.
Yeah.
My dad talks about how he opened a video and he started doing it, and then he realized it was 50 minutes and he stopped doing it at like 30 minutes. So there are some types of guys who will do, like a full 55, 60-minute class. But we found that most people tend to conk out around 30 to 35 minutes. So we really focus on creating our workouts around that length. And for a lot of guys, they're just, they're busy. Most of our guys are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. We don't have a lot of, 22-year-old TikTokers doing manful yoga. So, they're busy. They've got families, they've got jobs. They don't have an hour to do yoga every day. So that 30-minute, being able to just, okay, I've got 30 minutes. Let me just pop over into the other room. I'll follow along with this workout. I'll feel good about myself. I'll feel good for the day. I know that I'm, doing something healthy, and I know that over time I'm working toward improving my overall fitness. So that 30-minute mark, being able to do stuff without any equipment, finishing and feeling really accomplished, really sweaty, and not having to, deal with joint pain afterwards is something that just works really well for our audience, for our community.
Yeah, I can see that. All right. So what are the next videos you're going to make?
Well, I filmed a couple of videos this week. We have a cyclist cool down video. So a video specifically for cyclists after they do a cycle. I also just made a workout for strong twist for spinal mobility and stiffness relief. We made a workout last week for strong, what would I call it? Strong yoga for hips and back. So just, full body routine focused on a lot of different full body movements. We do have a yoga for, I can't talk about this yet, but I can't even talk about that. I am working on a lot of yoga for athletes content. So that's something that we're working on. But yeah.
Awesome. And what are your most popular workouts?
Well, it depends. So on YouTube, our public facing stuff, like the most popular workouts tend to be like the more sexy or the more interesting topics. So like yoga for sex, is a very popular one. We have yoga for, I think we have a yoga for, I can't remember if it's yoga for erectile dysfunction or it's yoga for better erections or something like that. We also have a video that does really well. What to do with your balls during yoga, or like how to, because that's a question that actually gets asked a lot.
Oh, no. I mean, with overweight women yoga, I've also interviewed people on that. It's like, what do you do with your boobs? So yeah, there's body parts that seem to somewhat get in the way at times.
So, and that's, in the female dominated yoga world, that's not a question that they're like, hey, can you, what do I, so like that video was actually really helpful for a lot of people. And, but I'm trying to think of like what videos are. We have a lot of videos that are really, really popular. We have one series called the Clark series, which everyone tends to like, which is 30 minutes of just moderately intense, full body, lots of combination of mobility and strength. It's just kind of a straightforward, no nonsense, all work, no restorative work. 30 minutes that does really well. We also have kind of a unique program called Strength Foundations course, which is really popular, which combines a lot of physical therapy with yoga poses and with bodyweight exercise. We even use resistance bands to really just address the main weaknesses that we see with people. Not getting the right hip muscles to fire, not understanding how to properly engage the core. Just building a lot of upper back and scapular stability work. So really just addressing all of the common weaknesses that we see in our community, but also in people in general. That does really well with picking out people's pain points and common weaknesses and helping to just kind of lift your fitness level from here to like here, just raising it up by addressing those weaknesses. So we have a lot of stuff. But yeah, the Strength Foundations course, that challenge seems to be kind of our most transformative kind of program.
Cool. So how does it work? Is if someone joins the community, then they just get access to all the things, or is it?
It's an amusement park. One pass gets you into everything, and then you're in. We have an app. We actually just launched a new app in June, which has what you can do is on iOS, Android, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV. We'll have Roku in the next few months, and it also works on any mobile browser. And all the stuff carries over between. So if you use it on the computer, then it'll carry over to your phone. We also have some guides to help you get started. So we have a get started guide, which kind of walks you through how to use it, gives you my recommended programs for getting started. But we also do a lot of stuff with accountability and with making sure you're consistent. That seems to be the biggest problem. So we actually wrote an email for every workout of every program to send you an email that day when you have a workout and say, hey, it's time to go do your workout. Here's what we're going to focus on today. Here's a little motivational message. Here's something else you might find interesting. So daily emails that hold you accountable, calendar features you can add to your smart calendar. So yeah, definitely giving you the programs and like a clear schedule of workouts to do, but also doing a lot to try and eliminate some of that accountability work that you would have to do yourself. Because that's where we see, that's where if all people had to do was just follow an exercise program, right, then it would work. But why aren't people doing it? So I try to take that onto myself a little bit and figure out how can I make this easier for you. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to talk. It was interesting to find out more about what's going on, with yoga and men and band flow yoga. So
it's definitely evolving. I think personally for me, I think I kind of got in, so to speak, at the right time. I think when I was doing yoga in 2011, I was like the one guy in the yoga class doing it. And, if I had asked my friends to come do a yoga class with me, they would be like, no. And now, especially in, bigger areas, like I'm in Austin, Texas, like the classes that I've been to here, it's like 25, 30, maybe even 40 or 50% men now. It's not like a female dominated thing in big cities. So it's
my friend in Tucson the other day, he went to a class and there were more men than women, and he was blown away. He just moved here from DC and it's like, whoa. So it really depends too how developed yoga is within the community.
Yeah, it's very true.
Awesome. All right. Well,
cool.
Everyone, this has been Dan Pohlman of manflowyoga.com. Thanks, Dean.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Kate.